Hello and good morning. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I am here for the next hour to hang out with you to answer your questions, to talk about random topics, and to share some Stonemaier Games news. I wanted to ask you to start off today, what time do you get up in the morning? What is your normal wake-up time? I ask because today I got up much earlier than usual. Megan's brother and sister-in-law were traveling, and so we gave them a little ride to the train station. So we woke up at 5:30 a.m. Walter was laying on my belly at the time, my cat Walter, and the alarm went off. Usually I don't wake up based on an alarm. So it was I've been awake for a lot longer than usual today. Usually I wake up around 7 o'clock, or Walter wakes me up a little bit earlier, a little bit later. But yeah, I hope you're doing well and that you had a good night's sleep last night. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot of a wide variety of topics to discuss today. Where to start? As usual, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Let's start with Geekway. Let's start with the topics that I have for the title of this video. And Geekway to the West is a big convention in St. Louis, a gaming convention, the type of convention where you just go and play games for a couple days. And it starts tomorrow. I am very excited about Geekway. I'm attending Geekway all 4 days, and just to play hopefully a variety of new to me games with a variety of wonderful people. That is my goal. I am one of the things that we're doing at Geekway. We do have a booth at Geekway. It's not like an exhibition style convention. Most of it's focused on playing games, but there is a section where you can go and get games from a variety of game publishers from their booths. And we have a booth, the Stonemaier Games booth, and we'll have a couple games there, a number of our games there, including my advanced copy of Vantage will be at the booth. And what we're going to do if you're at Geekway is we're going to have just a running game of Vantage happening at the booth. So if you want to stop by the booth and learn how to take a turn, you can take a turn for an in-progress game of Vantage. So you can just stop by, take a turn, maybe 2 turns, it's up to you, and then move on, and then someone else will come in and take another turn later. It's kind of like if we had a chessboard set up and people were taking turns over the course of a long weekend or a couple days, taking turns for that game of chess. So I'm excited to see how that game works out. And I don't know if we're going to reset it every day or maybe just have it going the entire convention. I don't know. But Vantage will be at the booth. A full copy of Vantage if you want to take a look and see what it looks like. And if you do see photos of it there, I just want to let you know that it will have an optional add-on. It'll have all the optional add-ons there, the metal coins, the wooden skill tokens, and the player mats. Those are optional. They are not part of the core box of the game, but you might see them in photos. So I don't want you to be confused if you do see them in photos. I see some friendly faces like Jeff and Chris are going to be at Geekway. I am really excited to see both of you, any of you who are attending Geekway. I saw someone else said they were getting in here. Corey is going to be there as well. I hope you all have safe travels as you come into town for this event. Daniel has a question about one of the topics on my subject line. Tuning in from the UK, does the recent tariff news bring you relief, or is there still uncertainty? Daniel, that's a great way to phrase the question, because one of the biggest problems with the tariffs, other than the enormity of the cost that they add for a company that wants to make games in China and bring them into the US, is the uncertainty about how they were implemented, and the uncertainty continues basically. So it is really tough to plan ahead when we don't know what the future holds. And currently we have what appears to be a 90-day reduction in the tariffs to 30%. Tariffs that I will remind you that as of January did not exist. There were no tariffs on tabletop games. So this was a self-inflicted thing that the current administration did to itself, essentially, and to small businesses like Stonemaier Games. 30% is certainly better than 145%, but a 90-day reprieve isn't, it's better than nothing, but it isn't all that helpful for those of us who are currently trying to plan for our holiday print runs, which will take longer than 90 days to make. And so we are planning ahead for a future where we don't know what will happen after that 90-day period. The best we can do for now is try to get as many of the things that I've talked about these 250,000 units that we started making before the tariffs existed. Those are now ready for us to ship, and we had planned on holding them a little bit, stalling in the hopes that the tariffs will get better. Now we we just need to ship them as fast as possible. But a lot of companies are doing this. And so due to this self-inflicted tariff situation, freight shipping prices are going to go way up. Shipments are going to take longer than normal. There's going to be congestion at ports in China and congestion at ports in the US. It is going to be a wild couple of months during this 90-day period. And then it'll be wild after that as well. So, I mean, it's I don't know. It's like giving someone really, really bad news and then giving someone slightly better news, but still really bad news. It's better, but it's I wish it didn't have to happen at all. I wish it hadn't happened at all. I'm trying to stay positive though with it. I know I try to. I know it's a big pain point, but I'm trying to stay as positive as possible about it. Aaron says, will the optional add-ons fit in the box? I'm assuming the playmats won't. Everything will fit in the box. The playmats will be the toughest to fit, but they do fit in terms of dimensions. They might just add a little bit of box lift, but not much, just a little bit of box lift. I see a lot of people answering the times that they get up. I see some early times here. William gets up at 4:45. That is an early time to get up, William. Jabri says, will you be personally attending the tabletop ME convention in Dubai in November? I saw Stonemaier Games will be joining. I'm not aware of anything that Stonemaier Games is doing in Dubai. I'll show you on our website here. I'll show you our website over here, and I definitely won't be there. I don't go to many conventions. Here is, if you go to our website and you go to news and go to events and conventions, you can see what we are attending, and you can see it here. So you can see coming up, we have Geekway to the West. That's this weekend. We have the UK Games Expo, BGG at Sea, Dice Tower East, Gen Con. There's nothing happening in Dubai here for Stonemaier Games. Yeah. Let's see what else here is going on. The other topic for today is Backman. I don't know if you all get this reference, but there's an author named Frederick Backman who is best known for his Beartown trilogy. And he also has a book called Anxious People that became a Netflix series, a really great Netflix series. And he also is known for a book called A Man Called Uva that became a movie called A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks. Really amazing author. He came into town, into St. Louis this past weekend, and I got to see him along with 500 other people. It was a very well-attended author event, and it was amazing. It was a really special event. And the reason I found that I really loved it, I've been to a few other author readings and signings in the past, and they've all been good in different ways. But for this one, all it was a conversation, like a Q&A, but mostly just a nice chat between someone from the Novel Neighbor, a bookstore here in St. Louis, and the author, Frederick Backman, who was very entertaining. He was very self-deprecating, very funny. And it was just them kind of talking and for an hour and a half almost. And so it wasn't a reading where the author just reads to you or where there's kind of an awkward Q&A. The Q&A was people asked questions in advance, and the host, the moderator, decided which questions to ask in advance and built them into the conversation. Just a beautiful, streamlined event. Also, the author signed all the books in advance. So to get into this event, you had to buy a book. The author, Frederick, signed them in advance. And so a lot of people waited in line to get their book personalized after the event. But for those of us, like, we didn't want to stick around for hours waiting in line, so we headed home, but we still had a signed book as a result of the author getting there early. Just from start to finish, it was an amazing author event. So I wanted to ask you all who are attending here, have you ever been to an author event, a book signing, that sort of thing? And was it as amazing as the one that I'm describing to you right now? Or have you read any of Frederick Backman's books? His latest book, the reason he's doing this tour is that he just came out with a new book called My Friends, which is what I'm reading right now. Anthony says, any thoughts on the recent Inside Up Dice Tower Games mini documentary video on board games? It would be cool to see more documentaries on this, not just a 7-minute clip. It's airing on TV, was brilliant. I have not seen it yet. I need to maybe find a way to watch the video online somewhere. But I think that's wonderful that they had this. I remember a while ago, I participated in a virtual interview with Connor at Inside Up, and a company that was working on a documentary about Inside Up games and about board games in general. And so I don't know if this is the same documentary, if this is something different, but I was involved in it a little bit. I'll probably, if I'm in it in any way, it's probably just a quick soundbite or a talking head for a few moments. Macintosh says, if taxes hike again, the tariff taxes, do you have a bonded warehouse where you can store incoming shipments? We do have, we work with a few different warehouses around the world. We ship from China directly to Canada. We work with Asmodee Canada in Canada. We work with Miniature Market here in St. Louis in the US. They have a massive warehouse where we store our products there. Let's Play Games in Australia, and then Spiral Galaxy in Europe. So we store our products on an ongoing basis in all of those different warehouses. I think that, yeah. So we are prepared to do that if necessary. Well, and we already do that. That's something we do on an ongoing basis for our games. The other thing I was going to add is that we do often also ship games directly to distributors. So if a distributor buys a whole container of our games, instead of shipping it to our warehouse and unloading it and then reloading it onto a container later, we just ship it directly to the distributor, which has also caused issues, or the tariffs have also caused issues for that process because of the way that we typically invoice distributors for those shipments. Jabri says the best convention posted on social media that Stonemaier Games will be joining. Maybe they'll have some of our games there, but if you could maybe, Jabri, if you don't mind emailing me about that. I really don't like misinformation. It probably isn't intentional, but if this convention is saying that Stonemaier Games will be there, we won't be there, so they shouldn't be advertising that. So if you can either let them know or maybe email me a link to the social media so I can clarify with them, that would be very helpful. My email is jamey@stonemaier.com. Oh, Carol says that some friends got to see Backman near Milwaukee. Yeah, he's doing a U.S. tour right now. Okay, I have a few questions about various campaigns. Here's a quick question from Marlene. That's an easy one. She says, how is Walter? Walter is doing well. Walter was on my belly this morning when an alarm went off because I had to set an alarm this morning, and he was a little scared by that. I was a little scared by that. He is not used to an alarm going off, and he associates it with us traveling. So he was a little nervous about that, but he seems to have calmed down now. So Chad has a question about a campaign. Battle Monsters from Restoration Games is on Kickstarter for $125 for 2 monsters. No doubt the huge miniatures make the price so high. Would you have made an acrylic standees option to bring the price down? What would I have done? So if I were still on Kickstarter, I would probably, the method that I always liked on Kickstarter was to have a standard version of the game and then a deluxeified version of the game that is more deluxe, more expensive. You see a lot of campaigns doing this. I've seen some campaigns doing it less because on Kickstarter, early adopters seem to gravitate much more heavily towards the fancy version. But I think having a standard version prepared and ready for retail is generally a good idea if you want the potential of having a retail evergreen game. So I don't know if I would have gone with standees necessarily, maybe, but in general, yeah, that is the method that I prefer to go with, or for a Kickstarter, not necessarily for any other product, but having a deluxe version and a standard version, or a standard version and then optional add-ons. The trouble with that, with giant miniatures, is that you need a box to hold those add-ons, so that becomes complicated as well. I also have another question from Garrett, who wasn't able to attend today, but he sent me a question in advance, which any of you are always welcome to do. You can always send me questions in advance if you're not able to attend, but want me to answer live. And Garrett asked about the current all-play campaign, which is interesting. It's one that I haven't quite seen before. So Allplay often does these campaigns where they are selling 3 new games, and they often do a great job of sharing a lot of information about those 3 new games. And you can either buy individual games from that set, or you can buy all 3 together. They're doing something very different with their current campaign, which is a campaign for 9 different games. And you don't know what 5 of them are. You have little hints about what they are, but you really don't know that much at all about them. And they state some reasons on the campaign, but largely for one of them, there's like legal reasons where they can't disclose what that game is. But the other 4, they've just decided to make it a secret. And I thought this was interesting. The campaign is doing okay. It has successfully funded, but I think they were hoping to get 2,000 backers, and they only have around 300 backers right now. Part of that might be due to the fact that you have to spend $200 on it. There's no other pledge level. You can't get different batches of 3s. You can't get a single game. You have to get everything for $200 for 9 games, which is a big pan to get into the campaign. And part of it might be because of the secrecy. I think people typically like to know what games they're getting if they're going to spend money on games. But I think also there's a certain level of trust like Allplay, where you pretty much know they're going to make something good. But I'm curious to see what Allplay will do with this. If they'll just proceed as normal. Most of these games will go into retail. They're making the games either way, and some of them will go to backers. But I wonder if part of their hope was the psychological effect of having something unknown can be exciting at times, but I think maybe too many unknowns at too high of a price can lead to some complications, or a lack of interest in the campaign. So I'm curious what you all think about this as well. Those are my quick thoughts about this Allplay campaign and this Restoration Games campaign. 2 different campaigns right now. But if you have any thoughts about them, let me know. And I can say for sure that both of those companies are trying to serve their backers. Like that is they do a great job of that very consistently. So this isn't a criticism of them. They're trying, both of them I think are probably trying something new and experimenting with it and seeing how it goes. So this is not a criticism of them at all, just observations of why their campaigns may be doing well or not well. I actually don't know how the Restoration Games campaign is going. Austin says, I've been looking into the design day on the website. Given the attendance cap, is this something that will be open for public ticket sales, or is it a closed event for ambassadors and such? Austin, this is an open event that was open for a limited number of people that we can fit into Pieces Board Game Bar and Cafe. So it is open for those who were able to buy tickets to it, and everyone else goes on a waiting list. So it is not in any way an exclusive or a closed event. It's something that was on our web store until we sold out of it. It's only limited because of space limitations at Pieces. And we've talked about this, like, do we move to a bigger space where we can fit more people? But it becomes a very different event if we do that. However, fortunately, there are a lot of different events around the country, Unpub, Protospiel, even at conventions like Geekway, there are ways to feature your prototypes there. So Design Day is far from the only way to play test your game in public. But it is a really neat special event. I appreciate your interest in attending. And the best way at this point to stay in the loop about it is to sign up for a back and stock notification. And that way we can let you know if we have slots or spots open up, and we can let you know in the future when tickets go on sale. Yeah. Okay. Chris says, a fresh haircut. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I gave myself a little trim the other day. For many years now, I've cut my own hair with varying results. And yeah, thank you for saying that, Chris. Thought I'd trim it a little bit before Geekway. Robert says, what defines it and where the pieces that make the item begin in relation to the items made in X, and how does that relate to current tariffs? Idea for board games is the essence, its rules. You can proxy all the other parts, but without the rules, you can't play the game as intended. So if the rules are written in America or Italy or wherever, does the game's origin and essence reside in that location? I see what you're getting at here, Robert. What defines country of origin? Country of origin is about the manufacturing country of origin, where over 50% of the parts and pieces of the game are made and assembled. And so for the products that we make, that is in China. And the reason for that, the primary reason for that, is that China is really good at making a bunch of different components, custom components, different sizes, different shapes, different molds, different die cuts, different components customized at scale and at a cost that can let us offer these games to customers at what we determine to be a reasonable price. So it isn't just about cost. It is about scalability and customization and variety, really, as well. Those are the 3 main factors as to why companies like mine produce our games in China. Mike says, when designing a game that is based off a specific intellectual property, is it a better practice to make the game playable in full before contacting the company with the rights, or is it better to contact before? That's a good question, Mike. In general, I think it is better to execute something before talking about it all that much. Ideas are fun to talk about for fun, but to go to someone with an idea and say, hey, I have an idea for a game about your intellectual property, that doesn't really mean anything until you've actually play tested and iterated and actually created something. So in full, maybe not, but to have a playable game, for sure, I think that is the starting point for any conversation about publishing a game, whether it's related to an intellectual property or not. So yeah, I think try to execute on your vision first. And it is completely possible at that point that you will learn that the IP isn't available, or that you can't even get in touch with someone about the intellectual property. But you might at that point still have a great game, and you might be able to, ideally at that point, I think it's fairly likely that you could convert it to a different theme, or a slightly different theme that isn't directly related to the IP. Like you could take a superhero game, and instead of making it Marvel themed, you could just create your own superheroes for that game. I see some comments about this. Nickel says, I saw that you designed one of the factions for the upcoming Terra Mystica fan factions expansion. Yeah, that was a while ago that I created this this fan faction. Nickel says, I would love to hear a little bit about the process behind that. Yeah, this was years ago. We work at Stonemaier Games. We work, our German partner is Forland, and Forland is the publisher of Terra Mystica. And Frank at Forland knows how much I love Terra Mystica. And years ago, he reached out to me and said, he said they were thinking about doing some fan factions. They weren't sure if they would publish them or just put them online. And he asked if I would be interested in creating one, because Terra Mystica is one of my favorite games. And so just for fun, I tried that. I didn't spend all that much time on it because my focus is Stonemaier Games, but I do love Terra Mystica. So I had an idea for a faction where instead of like Terra Mystica generally wants you to have a bunch of different separate cities. And I was like, wouldn't it be cool if you could just have one really big city? And it's been a while since I played this faction, but I think the idea was even that maybe you start with a city. But again, it's been a while since I played it. And so I just kind of took that idea and play tested it a little bit, and then sent it off to Frank. And they coordinated a lot of play testing with these factions, both online on Board Game Arena, and I think they shared the factions very publicly on Board Game Geek. And now it's pretty exciting that they're actually going to publish them. So I'm looking forward to playing with a faction where I can't say that I fully designed it, but I was definitely part of the creation process of it. I had the idea, I play tested it a few times, and I'm curious to see what it became in the end. And from what I can recall, it's pretty similar to what I came up with at the beginning too. So yeah, I'm very excited to see that. Axel has a good comparison, I think, to All Play's campaign. Axel says, I think they, All Play, are going for something like Brandon Sanderson's Secret Projects campaign, which was the biggest Kickstarter campaign ever. Actually, that's a great comparison. I think that talks well about the psychology of trust and also the excitement that secrecy can lead to. I don't know. I feel like, but I see the comparison. It feels a little bit different for books than for board games. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder, and perhaps this leads to another question, Axel, for you or for others, but I myself, I know that I have certain authors, Brandon Sanderson among them, where I will buy sight unseen anything that they write. There are a few caveats to that, but for the most part, anything they write, I don't need to know all that much. I just need to know that if Brandon Sanderson wrote a novel, I will buy that novel sight unseen, and I will look forward to the day that it's ready and I will read it. I don't need to know the details of it. For board game designers, there are certainly designers where if they come out with a new book, if they are a game, not a new book, but a new game, I will be curious about it. But I don't know if there's any game designer, even though I am definitely curious about a number of any game design, but also specific designers. I don't know if there's any game designer where I will buy a game sight unseen from that designer. I want to learn more about that game to see if it's a good fit, especially given how crowded my shelves are. So I don't know if that carries over for books and games. Maybe, yeah. So I'm curious how you all feel about that. Are there authors whose books you will buy sight unseen, and are there game designers whose games you will buy sight unseen, or is there a difference between those two? Harrison also points out that it feels a little bit like a subscription. You're paying a fee and you're getting new games over the course of a year, because they will be shipped in batches. And that's another good comparison, Harrison. I like that. What Tyrant says, I just found out that there's a Canadian web store. And yes, I'm glad you mentioned this. I talked about our different fulfillment centers a few minutes ago. And for each of those fulfillment centers, we have our own web store. That way we can have the currency correct for those web stores. We can have the inventory correct for those web stores. So yeah, we have a Canadian web store, a US web store, an Australia, Asia, New Zealand web store, and a Europe web store. So yeah, for anyone who doesn't know that, who's around the world, all of our games are region friendly. And if you buy a game from our Canadian web store, it's going to be shipped from you to you from within Canada, using Canadian dollars, using Canadian tax laws and things like that. Yeah, that's how we work. And I'm glad you discovered that. That's something that I am aware of course, but maybe not everyone else is. A frail old lady says, hi, Jamey, how do you decide what actions do in your games? If you have a game with lots of cards or actions, do you just spit them all out of your head and then try playing it, or is it more involved or careful? I think a lot about action systems as like how do I want players to how do I want them to take a turn in the game? I have a number of videos about this where you could probably tell I think a lot about action systems, and then the exact actions that I want them to take. That's another good question. Like while I'm designing games, for how do I decide what I want players to actually do and how do I want them to do it? It really depends on the game. Like for Vantage is this big cooperative open world game that I've been working on for a long time. It took me a while to figure out what restrictions I wanted to put on actions and how much freedom I wanted to give players, because Vantage is largely all about freedom and exploration and discovery. I wanted players to interact with the world in the way that was felt the most right to them or to their character. And so in Vantage, on any given location, there are typically 6 different ways that you can interact with that location. Action categories of like move, look, engage, help, take, and overpower. 6 different ways. And you can also just move off. You can depart from that location to another adjacent location if you want. Coming up with that action system took a lot of experimentation. So I think maybe the best way I can say this for any given game, including Vantage, is that I start somewhere with like a rough idea of the feeling, the experience that I want players to have, and maybe the amount of freedom that I want them to have in the game. And then from there, I decide what action system I think will work well and what types of actions I want them to be able to take. But this is all very vague because it really depends heavily on the game itself. But it's a really fun question. I really appreciate that question. Ian says, why not split design day into multiple days? And I would say the main answer to that, it is something that we've considered. The main answer is that design day is, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work though, and it's a very intense day. And we've kind of just decided so far that we like having one a year. It is something that we do for fun at Stonemaier Games, and it is a part of community building. We strongly believe in community building, but one is the right number for us, I guess, is the way of saying it. Like, why? It's kind of like saying, why don't we do it every weekend? Why don't we do it every month? Why don't we, we've decided that one is the right number for us based on the amount of resources and coordination and planning and effort that goes into it. And maybe that will change in the future, but currently one for us is the right amount. Especially knowing that it is not the only game design prototype playtesting event that happens around the US or around the world. There are a lot of other options for people to consider. And there are a lot other options for people to, if their focus for design day is to hang out with us, there are other ways to do that, including, importantly, Geekway to the West, which is happening this weekend. Several of us, including myself, attend Geekway to the West. And my entire purpose at Geekway to the West is to hang out with people and play games with people. While I publish games, I don't play test prototypes, but I also don't play test prototypes all that much at design day. I'm more hanging out, lingering, asking a few questions here and there. So yeah, multifaceted answer there, Ian. Totally fair question too, but I think for any anything that we invest ourselves into, anything that we decide to spend our time and resources and energy into, we have to find, or I have to find the right time to do it, and the right I'm forgetting the word here, but how often that is right for me to do that. And so once a year for design day right now. Eric says, do the tariffs have an effect on the presence of Stonemaier Games at Spiel Essen Spiel this year, the big convention in mid-October, I believe, this year? They do not impact Spiel at all. I understand that some publishers are tightening their budgets, reasonably so, because we're paying higher taxes than usual this year due to the tariffs. But no, it won't impact our presence there, and it won't impact our prices certainly in Europe as well, because Europe doesn't have tariffs. Okay, William has a comment about the secrecy element of the All Play campaign. While I like the novel marketing, as a consumer, I need a much lower price point for a product having so much mystery. Are we selling board games in booster packs now? Yeah, it does feel a little bit like a mystery booster pack campaign. Rolling Reggie says that Decision Space just dropped their top 5. There's a wonderful podcast run by a few friends of mine, Decision Space, and Reggie, I'm glad you're a fan as well. And yeah, last week I think they posted the beginning of their top 10 list of all time, and this week they posted their it sounds like they just posted their top 5s. I've not listened to that one yet. Currently, I'm listening to the latest podcast from the Covenant Cast. They don't release that many podcasts anymore, but it is a great conversation whenever they do. I highly recommend checking out the Covenant Cast. Trying to think of other media that I've consumed recently that maybe you might be interested in. I did play. I just sat down. I've been talking about Vantage a lot lately. We're getting close. In fact, production on Vantage, the first wave of Vantage production assembly completes tomorrow if everything goes well, and should start to ship out of China. The first wave should ship out of China in the coming weeks. Or where was I going with this? But I've been talking about it so much. I decided the other day I just want to sit down and play Vantage for fun, just for me. I don't want to film it. I don't want to. I just want to enjoy this game that I've spent the last 8 years making. And so I sat down and played a solo game of Vantage, and I had a wonderful time. I love this game so much, and I'm so excited to share it with you. But it was really nice just to have an hour for myself just to play Vantage and enjoy it. I went on a delightful adventure. I won't spoil what happened on that adventure, but it lasted about an hour. I didn't succeed. I didn't complete my mission, but I still had a wonderful time and a story to tell as a result of it that maybe I'll share with you in the future after you get to play Vantage a little bit. So I played that. I also played in a disc golf tournament this past weekend. And I'm not really a tournament-driven player. I'm more of a casual disc golfer, but it was a beautiful day, and it was a course set up at a park that usually doesn't have a course there, so it was a novel experience. I attended a soccer game here in St. Louis. I see Chris Porter was in the comments talking earlier. Chris loves soccer. I got to attend the St. Louis versus San Diego game at the incredible St. Louis soccer stadium. If you ever visit St. Louis, I highly recommend trying to go to the stadium that we have downtown. And also last week I got to play Ora et Labora, one of my favorite older games, The Gang, cooperative poker game that I love, Ito, and Here Lies. Ito is a cooperative game where you're trying to answer a question and everyone orders your answers in a specific order to try to, but blind. And then Here Lies is another cooperative game, limited communication cooperative game about solving a mystery. I've been having a lot of fun with that one. That's all the stuff, or some of the things I've been consuming recently. We've been watching a bunch of shows. We're hoping to finish off Andor today, Andor season 2, and we watched the previous Mission Impossible movie recently in preparation for the upcoming Mission Impossible movie. Kevin says, with all the volatility and the tariffs changing every month, weekday, and it does feel like that, when do you get charged? When the shipment arrives in the U.S. or when it ships from China or another country? Yeah, so when we make something in China and ship it to the U.S. as of this year, based on the tariffs. It didn't happen before this because there were no tariffs. When the goods arrive in the U.S., if we want to get them into the U.S., that is when we are charged the tariffs, and that's when we have to pay for the tariffs. And if we don't pay for the tariffs, we don't get the goods into the country. So they're kind of held for ransom essentially at that point, unless we pay for the tariff taxes. Leon's asking for spoilers about the codenames. Leon, I always appreciate curiosity and speculation about codenames, but I do not spoil anything about the codenames on our e-newsletter. Let's see. Well, Josh was very kind to say that I am a board game designer, that he would say that he buys sight unseen. That's very kind of you to say, Joshua. I appreciate that. And really, I appreciate that, but I also don't expect that from anyone. Like I want to be held accountable for everything that we do and everything that we make. And I know that everyone's budget is limited in some way. And so I don't expect anyone to buy, whether it's sight unseen or sight seen, to buy all of our products. I want you to buy what's right for you. And hopefully we can make some things that are exciting for you to consider buying in the future. Mark says, thank you for the 10 steps in designing your first game video. I put this up on Sunday, this video about what to think about when you're designing your first game. And actually, this video came from a conversation that we had in one of these live casts a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago. And that was a lot of fun to film. And I'm glad it was helpful for you, Mark. Mark says, I'm at the point where I'm happy with my design that I'll be writing the rulebook soon, thinking about pitching it after a few more playtests. And Mark, that's great. That's a great step to be in the process. I'm glad you've come this far. And Mark touches upon one of the main things I talked about in this video, that there are different types of playtests, especially for your first game. There's small playtests where it's maybe just yourself getting the feel for the game, then bringing in a few friends to play it, friends or family, then expanding to other people locally, and then doing some blind playtests. Lots of different layers of playtests and types of playtests as you're testing different things early on for your first game. Steve says, with the tariff situation, have you considered widening your approach to what types of games Stonemaier publishes? For example, smaller box games that cost less to produce but can still pack a punch. Steve, that's certainly been on my mind a lot lately, largely through the filter of if tariffs got to the point where there was no other option but to make games in the US. Our creativity would be heavily hampered and limited by what we can actually make here. It would be probably limited to much more basic card games. But you can also do a lot with cards. Magic the Gathering has done amazing things with a vast variety of cards and mechanisms over the years. So I have certainly been brainstorming cards-only games recently. I don't think this will reshape what we make, but I think it is an interesting design challenge to see if we can make something that meets all of our goals, including even the component hook goal, even in a cards-only game. Another Steve, multiple Steves here, says, I love that you have been releasing deluxe components as an add-on. I've gotten all of them for use in any games. Have you considered releasing generic deluxe components? Steve, we actually did this way back in the day. We had a line of, we call them treasure chests, that we made of these really deluxe tokens that you could use in any game. Any game that uses the tokens in these treasure chests. I think we made a total of maybe around 7 different treasure chests of these tokens. And after a while, we started working with Top Shelf Gamer to sell these tokens after the Kickstarters for them. And then eventually we just sold the entire brand to Top Shelf Gamer because they were really good at selling them and thinking about them, and it was becoming less of our core competency. So if you do want to see these types of special, beautiful resource tokens, I highly recommend checking out Top Shelf Gamer. I don't think this is something that we would do for our games in the future, though. We'll make add-ons specific to our games. I see in the comments, I'm not ignoring the comments, but I see a lot of answers to my question about which authors and which game designers or publishers that people are willing to buy sight unseen. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those answers. I'm seeing them a little bit. Let's see. Austin has a question. You mentioned before that you've gotten really far into designing and playtesting some games before realizing they didn't quite work. Looking back on them now with more experience, do you think there are ways to make any of them work? Probably, Austin. Yeah, I think part of it is about my level of excitement and motivation for those games. I always take notes for those games and about what worked and what didn't work. And yeah, I sometimes end up revisiting those games to see if there was something there. Oftentimes, they just end up informing other game designs instead. It's often a sign to me where if I playtest something and I'm not excited to continue with it at that time, either at all or at that time, that's a sign that it may not be a game that I have the excitement to pursue. Basically, I look at my own excitement a lot to see if it's a game that I want to work on more or not. Yeah. Okay. Dana says, what is my current favorite non-Stonemaier game? As in, which game do you keep coming back to as of late? Dana, twice a year, I make my top 10 list. And actually, I can't remember what game I put at the top. I think maybe Forest Shuffle was the game that I put at the top of my top 10 list when I filmed it back in March. So I would say that's my best answer right now, Dana, to give. Forest Shuffle would be my favorite non-Stonemaier game as of right now. But on any given day or any given week, that answer might vary. But I've noticed that I keep coming back to Forest Shuffle. But there are a number of games. I own a number of games that I would gladly play at any given time. Right now, though, I would say that since I'm attending this convention over the next few days, I'm excited to play some new to me games. So maybe discover the next Forest Shuffle for me to see if there's something like that out there. And some of the games here I'll share with you all. Some of the games that I am very excited to play over the next few days. Some very new to the list, others not that have been on the list for a while. I'm going to try to play Finca and Cosmoctopus, Deep Regrets, Life of the Amazonia, the Transformers deck building game, Nova Roma. And most recently, I added a few others to the list: Planted, Fife, Arcana Rising, and Biohack. There are some others as well. I see Rebirth on here. There's some others too that I'm looking forward to maybe playing. Those are all new to me games that I haven't played yet that I'm very curious about. Chad says that he had fun with the cooperative gameplay video from Rado, or Team Rado, really, that I posted on the Stonemaier Games channel. Yeah, this is something that we're doing this year in general, where we sponsored a number of content creators that we really like to do playthroughs of our games, and they could choose any games that they wanted for those playthroughs. With our agreement with them being that since we're sponsoring the video, they post the video on their channel, and we also get to post the video on our channel for those who like to subscribe to Stonemaier Games to see what's going on with our games. So, Chad, I'm glad you enjoyed that particular video. One of the companies that are making their debut at Geekway this year is Gamehead Games. So be on the lookout for Gamehead Games. Paul Solomon is at the helm of Gamehead Games. So if you are at Geekway, please stop by not only the Stonemaier Games booth, but also the Gamehead Games booth. Michael has a comment about the all-play campaign. I think this model works better for single products where you know the type of thing you're getting, more monsters, player factions, etc. Maybe the secret game is not for you. Yeah, that's a good point, Michael. Like if it's a game that I already know that I love, I don't necessarily need to know all the details about the expansion. Just that there is an expansion, the basics of what it adds, and the price point. Like currently I'm backing the new Earth expansion. I didn't dig all that deep into it. I just know that I love Earth, and it looked like it added some things without overcomplicating it too much, and the little miniatures looked cute, and the price was right. I didn't dig much. I spent like maybe 10 minutes looking into that campaign. Oh, James Hudson is here. Yeah, James, proudly wearing a Druid City Games shirt today. I love the green, James. I think this might be one of the few green shirts that I own. Harrison says, have you heard of the podcast My Perfect Console? Simon Parking interviews folks from video games, music, comedy, and more about video games that influence their lives. I think you'd be a great guest. Thank you, Harrison, for that recommendation. I'm not much of a digital game player, but it does sound like a podcast that I'd love to listen to. I'll make a note about that. My Perfect Console. My Perfect Console. Thank you for that recommendation. Trying to think of anything else that I'm consuming right now. I talked about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what I'm listening to. Yeah, I think I've covered all the things that I'm consuming right now. In terms of food, I haven't done treat of the day. My treat of the day today, the farmer's market recently, Megan picked up a chocolate cake sandwich where in between two layers of chocolate cake is a layer of cookie dough. She picked this up a few weeks ago. I was jealous of it because it looked amazing and delicious. And so when I went to our local farmer's market this past weekend, I picked out my own chocolate cake sandwich from this place. I believe they're called Key Cakes, is the place at the St. Louis farmer's market that has these little cakes, little kind of European style triangular sandwiches. It looks like a sandwich case from Europe. And so that will be my treat of the day. Probably not the whole thing, because that is a lot of cookie dough to eat, but I am excited to have that after my lunch today. What about you? Do any of you have any fun treats today? Here's a question, another question from a frail old lady. Do you have any games you've made just for yourself or friends? And if so, how often do you get them to the table? That's a good question. Have I designed any games just for myself and just for friends, not for the pursuit of publishing them? There's certainly games that started out that way. Where it just like I wanted to just go through the motions of trying to design a certain type of game. And every now and then I go through the motions of doing this for light, short, easy to teach games that scale well to higher player counts. It is not an area of design that I'm good at all. And so it's fun to experiment with because it's fairly easy to, I don't say easy. It's fairly quick to try to work on these types of games. But they don't end up, because they don't work, they don't end up getting to the table very often. Ivan says, will you use the sudden tariff drop to bring Vantage into the US, or will you wait until they are finally removed? Ivan, the plan was, no matter what the tariffs were, to ship the first wave of Vantage to the US and around the world, to our fulfillment centers around the world, because the first wave of Vantage is for direct sales. And so even though we would be paying much higher taxes than well, really, normally there isn't a tariff tax at all. So we're paying the tariff taxes either way. At least our margins are a little bit better there for direct sales. So that was the plan all along. And now it's just a matter of we're proceeding to ship them. And it's a matter of us paying higher freight shipping costs because of the unforeseen consequences of the tariffs going up and down. Ahmed says, I'm curious about your taste in board games. Which weight do you like when playing a board game, or as a player, not a designer? Heavyweight like Lacerda, or midweight, or maybe lightweight? I generally gravitate towards medium weight games. You can probably see that a lot in the types of games that I designed, but that is also the type of game that I generally gravitate towards playing. Nate says, regarding the faction you helped design for Terra Mystica, there's a faction in Gaia Project that is very similar to that. You build one big city. Were you involved in designing that one? No, I wasn't. No, I'm not actually aware of that one. My faction might have been an inspiration for it, might not have. I think my faction was designed before Gaia Project was released. But yeah, I don't know the story behind that particular faction. Mike says, I want to start making games. Is it unwise to share details with groups of people for concern of idea theft, or is that not a concern when it comes to game making? Idea theft is not really a thing, because ideas are just thin air. Like ideas are wonderful to talk about and be excited about, but they aren't actually worth anything. It's execution that is worth everything, especially for tabletop game design. So please share your ideas, talk about your process, talk about your game openly. It isn't worth anything until you actually start executing. And I actually talk about this, Mike, in a video that will probably air this Sunday on our YouTube channel, where I talk about 20 different game ideas that I have had over the years that I think are halfway decent that I might want to pursue. And I share them openly in this video. And I actually ask for people's feedback about them. Like, what ideas that I'll share in this video would you be the most interested in me continuing to design, versus those that you think I should just let them be fun ideas and leave them at that. I'm very excited for this video to air, because I haven't done something like that before. Let's see. Frank is working on a Charterstone campaign. He's looking to start playing it for the first time with a group of 5. As with any new game, I try to do a decent amount of prep work with learning the game and its rules. I need assurances that I can start the game without knowing a whole lot about it. You can, Frank, you can. There is a rule book for Charterstone. There isn't much in the rule book, but it is everything that you need to know to sit down and start and to teach the game and share it with other people. There aren't a lot of rules that you need to know to start out with, but there's enough there. Or actually, originally when I was designing Charterstone, I wanted it to be a game where there was none of that. But playtesters kept me to say that they wanted something in advance. They wanted some semblance of rules in advance, and so that's what ended up in the final game. Steve says, have you played the video game Animal Well? It's a fantastic Metroidvania video game, but with no combat. Rather, it's a puzzle-based Metroidvania. It's a special game, one that you might enjoy. I've heard great things about Animal Well. I've heard it compared a little bit to the game that I've really enjoyed recently called Blueprints. But in Animal Well, whereas you need to apparently look up things and even work together with people online to figure out certain puzzles, that isn't necessarily the case in Blueprints. I have not delved into Animal Well, but I'm curious about it and might delve into it a little bit. Recently, I have been playing some more Inkborn, which is the game that I am personally involved with, not Stonemaier Games, but Jamey is personally involved with it as a consultant and as an investor. And I've really been enjoying it. I think it continues to come a long way. And if you were involved in the beta testing process for Inkborn, I think you'll soon see some big updates that show you the bigger scope of this game that they're working on. Ian says, what's my favorite deck builder? I'm looking at Unstoppable. Unstoppable is one of the games I'm actually hoping to try at Geekway if I have the chance to do so. I haven't done a favorite deck builder list for a little while now, but I'd probably put, I mean, Clank would certainly be up there, but the latest Clank Legacy may have knocked it a little bit lower on the list. Maybe Dune Imperium. I really do love Dune Imperium. But I like the new Mistborn game. Actually, it'd probably be the Star Wars deck building game. I love the Star Wars deck building game. I think that is one of the best deck builders. Or one of my favorite deck builders, at least. But there are quite a few. I really do love the deck building mechanism. It's shown up in a lot of my favorite mechanism videos. Oh, Julie says that her son and her have the Transformers deck building game. He's a Transformers fan. And I like the integration of the theme. I'm very excited to try it. I have a friend bringing it, Julie, to Geekway. I'm very curious to try that one. Nolan also vouches for Cosmoctopus. That's nice. Oh, it looks like I got behind on questions again. I'll try to catch up a little bit. Aaron says, I ordered Molly House yesterday, and I'm looking forward to playing it when it arrives. I heard you had a favorite mechanism video for it. How did you feel about learning Molly House? I had a really good teacher in Pete. I think Pete struggled a little bit with the teach because there's certain layers that don't make sense until you get to that stage of the game. But I thought he did a great job overall. Overall, I thought it was pretty easy to get into the game as long as we were okay not fully understanding the consequences of our early decisions in Molly House, because it really is not clear early on what implications those actions early on have for the later stages of the game. Until you at least have a festival or festivity, until you have that, then you don't fully understand it. And even then, you have to complete a festivity to fully understand the consequences behind it. Steve says, have you seen these smaller games now selling at Miniature Market from publisher Plate? The board is outside of the box and really snaps together with magnets to give it a tiny footprint. I have not seen that, but that sounds like a really innovative way to use the box as a component for the game. Chad says, my favorite combat mechanisms video is 5 years old. Do you tend to wait a certain amount of time before updating videos? Curious if any newer games would make it on this list. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. I think Mistborn would. Mistborn certainly would. I don't gravitate towards too many games with combat, so I don't know if I would have much to add to that list over the last few years. But, Chad, you do talk about something important here where I don't often go back and look at those older videos to decide what I want to discuss now. So if there's ever anyone who follows this YouTube channel, if you like the top 10 list or top 5 list that I make, and you watch a video and you see a much older version or younger version of me, and you're like, oh, I would love to see a more updated version of this video, let me know. Let me know anywhere in the comments. Generally in the comments, let me know. And I am happy to do a newer version of those videos, especially if 3 to 4 years at least have passed since the last version of that video. Because typically I play hundreds of games every year, and we'll probably have a newer version to think about. Michael says, any plans to make a follow-up to Smitten? Smitten, this game right here, is just a game that nods at 10 of our different games. And so we've come out with a bunch of different games since then. So I think it is likely, if not possible, if not likely, that we will do something for Smitten in the future that winks or nods at our games that have been released since the previous Smitten. This was something special that we did for our 10th anniversary. Icy Skater says, I heard Queen Games now makes games in Germany. If the tariffs go up in the future, could you use the place that Queen uses to avoid the tariffs? We could. This is another area of where uncertainty causes an issue with it, because originally when the tariffs were implemented back on April 2nd, they were for every country, and still there are tariffs in place for every country. So no country is really exempt to these tariffs. Also, we sell a fairly small percentage of our games, at least directly in Europe. We sell the most of our games in the US. So if there were to be a second place where we really considered manufacturing our games, it would probably be in the US. But no matter what, we have to ship those games worldwide. So no matter where we make our games, we need to ship them to other places. Leon says, will the US tariffs affect video game prices in Canada? On multiple levels, no. Tariffs, unless those video games are actual cartridges or made in China and then manufactured and then brought into the U.S. No, but the tariffs don't impact digital goods, and they definitely don't impact anything in Canada because the tariffs are on goods made in China and imported into the U.S. I guess the one exception to that would be if that happens, they're made in China, they're brought into the U.S., and then for some reason they were shipped from the U.S. to Canada, but there's really not a good reason for that. Goods can easily be shipped directly from China to Canada. Nate says, any updates on your legal suit against the executive branch? Are you in a position where you can't say much or anything at all? At this point, I know that I got an update from, I get occasional updates from the lawyers. It's completely in their hands that they're handling this. And I think they just had to, basically there are many of these lawsuits. There's one lawsuit that isn't ours that is moving a little bit faster. And I believe one of the courts said that they're going to put a pause on some of the other lawsuits until they handle that one lawsuit. But our lawyers are saying, no, our lawsuit should also continue to go through the motions. So I think that's where it currently is. But I don't know much more about it at this exact stage currently right now. Mark says, do you have an expected release date for the Tokaido expansions? We do, but we haven't announced that yet, Mark. But we have a rough idea of when it will be. One of the reasons I don't announce it is that I don't fully know yet until the manufacturing is complete, until freight shipping is actually actively happening and things like that. Logan says, any plans for digitizing Vantage? I didn't like Gloomhaven Solo, but this digital implementation was amazing. That's a fair way to ask it. Do we have plans for it? We do not have plans for digital Vantage. We haven't, because partially we haven't released the analog Vantage yet. But generally, our method is that after our games have been available on the tabletop for around 2 to 3 years, that is when we start to consider digital versions of our games. And sometimes we end up working on them a little bit in advance of that. But generally it's around that 2-year mark where we really start looking into it and start finding a digital developer who might be interested in it. So for at least 2 years, there won't be any digital option available for Vantage. And I would highly recommend having your first experience for Vantage be on the tabletop. I think it plays at all player counts, it plays incredibly well, but I've had a blast playing it solo and at lower player counts in particular. But it does scale all the way up to 6 players. Xavier says, can you briefly explain how someone with a board game concept pitches those to large companies, and if large companies are more likely to turn a designer's concepts down right now? Xavier, I don't have a really brief answer for that, but I do have a video about if you search our YouTube channel for 4 steps to pitch your game, you can see what this process looks like. And the very quick version of this is if you have fully designed a game, so don't just have an idea, you've fully designed a game. So you've designed it, you've play tested it extensively, you've iterated it, you've honed it into something that is fun and balanced and intuitive. At that point in time, if you have a few publishers that you think your game would be a good fit for, go to their websites and look at their submission guidelines. You can see if they're accepting game submissions or not, but look at the design guidelines or the submission guidelines for each of those different publishers and then follow those guidelines. That is how you do it. As for right now, based on the general economy and tariffs of surrounding games, like everything is uncertain and feels a little odd right now. It is, you can still submit games to publishers right now. I think publishers are still looking at the future and looking at any publisher is still probably excited about publishing a great game in the future. Yeah, so I would say the timing as of right this moment doesn't, the tariffs don't really impact the desire for discovering great games, is the way I'll put it. I'm saying this very carefully because for any publisher, publishers are people, right? And so if you submit your game to a publisher at a time where they are going through a really stressful time, for example, and maybe their a Kickstarter campaign isn't going as well as they hoped, or they released a game and they got a bunch of bad reviews for this game. They are humans, and the emotions related to those tough times, that is probably not the best time to submit a game to a publisher, because they're probably thinking about a lot of other things and being stressed about a lot of other things at that time. But that's not your responsibility. It's your responsibility just to make a great game and to, if you don't want to be a self-publisher, to find the publishers that you think it might be a good fit for and follow their guidelines. Steve says, have you considered doing a top 10 underrated games? Underrated in that they deserve more exposure. Love. My favorite underrated game is Naishi. Such a fantastic game. Steve, I think I've done a couple of these. I've done at least one for sure. I think you can find it if you search our YouTube channel for underrated. I've definitely done some using the metric of games that are outside of the BGG top 1,000, I believe is the metric that I've used for that. But if you search for the word underrated, I think you will find that on our YouTube channel. Trishul says, how does your play group feel about a rolling teach where you start the game with minimal instructions and teach rules as required throughout the game? How do you handle competitive players? Trishul, that's a great question. That is my preferred teaching method, to give a very quick broad overview of the game, and then to have players start taking turns as soon as possible, layering on concepts as we go. That is how I explain our games 90% of the time to 90% of the people in our group. There are certainly a few people that I play games with who want to know a lot more of the rules up front. And I understand that. At the same time, I think it can be a huge impediment to all the other players who are on board for a rolling teach, that is more on that player to work around the rest of the group than the rest of the group's responsibility to work around that one player. And so generally, I go all in on the rolling teach. And if maybe that one player does they want to know a lot more, then I might encourage them to watch a rules video or learn about the game in advance, rather than waiting for a full, a 20 to 30 minute teach before we even start doing anything. That could be really cumbersome. Julio says, do you think e-ink displays will make their way into tabletop gaming? How do you think they could be used? I do love e-ink for reading. I love that you don't have to deal with like the glare of a phone or an iPad. I read on a Kindle. I read almost everything on my Kindle. It's an interesting question. Could it find its way into tabletop gaming? I would say probably not, because it is by default almost a very bland way of looking at something. But it's bland by design. Whereas tabletop games, I don't really want them to be bland by design. I want them to be visually exciting by design. But that is a fun question. Jason, and I will say, you all have been off the charts on questions today. I feel like I've been talking nonstop about answering your questions. I love the questions. Let me see if there's anything else that I haven't talked about today. Yep, as usual, I left a question off here, but we're already at time, so I want to ask that question. I will say that I have a video or an interview with NPR that'll be coming out later this week. Hopefully, I got the message across well on this interview that I had yesterday. Also wanted to celebrate the birthday of Mark, who is our replacement parts helper in the UK and for Europe overall. Mark has been helping Stonemaier Games with replacement parts for many years now. He is truly wonderful. Mark, happy birthday. I really, really appreciate you. And I'm going to actually meet Mark and his wife, Donna, in the UK in about a month, where we get to see them before we go on our BGG at sea cruise to Norway. So I'm so excited to meet Mark in person for the first time. I think that's the last thing I had on my list. So I'll end with a few questions real quick here. Jason says, do you ever get game inspiration or ideas from your dreams? As I was going through this list of all the hundreds of ideas I've had over the years to make this 20 idea video for this coming weekend, I did find one idea that was listed as idea that you had from a dream. So I don't remember the specifics of it, but I did have one idea written down that came specifically from a dream. I don't think it went anywhere, though. It didn't end up on my top 20 list. FG Bison says, hey, Jamey and everyone. Greetings from Indonesia. Quick question before you call today. Surprised me that Fate of the Fellowship popped up on Board Game Arena for us to try. Have you tried that one yet? That is very fast for that one to pop up on Board Game Arena. The game hasn't even been released on the tabletop. I don't understand when companies do this. Have you tried it yet? I have not tried it yet, no, but I guess I'll have to try it on Board Game Arena in the near future. Chad also asked what my chocolate of the day is. And yeah, the cake sandwich that I mentioned earlier is a chocolate cake sandwich. I see a few people mentioned Naishi, so I need to apparently try this game. Naishi and Fate of the Fellowship, I'll bookmark those on Board Game Arena. Samwise says, is there anything about Inkborn that you had a personal hand in that I should keep an eye out for while trying the beta? A lot of the feedback that I've been giving the developers about this digital deck building roguelike game is about the interface and making things very clear to players about what the different abilities do, what the math is for the game, making it less opaque. But in terms of ideas that I mentioned, one of them was that when you kill, you're fighting monsters. You're often fighting multiple monsters, and to have each monster drop something different when you kill them, giving you a reason to take on the monsters in a different order based on what reward you're going to get from them. That was one thing I mentioned to them. They have implemented it. I don't know exactly how clear it is yet. I think it's still somewhat of a surprise as to what you get when the monster drops it, which is okay. What else? The combo system was entirely theirs. For me, it's been about like how transparent do we make the combo system as you discover playing different types of cards in different orders. There's been a lot. I mean, it's been a year-long process. So there are other things that I have contributed to the game itself, but I'm not. Oh, I really encourage them with some of my ideas, but a lot from the developers are lean into the idea that the cards in your deck have this this manuscript theme to them. So to add more keywords and abilities that are related to manuscripts, and they've really run with that and done some really cool things with that. So I really want the cards in this game to feel unique from other similar deck building games like Slay the Spire. All right, I think I reached the end of the questions here. Again, thank you for all these amazing questions. If you have any others that you think of in the future, post them in the comments on YouTube, and I'm happy to answer them there. I hope you all have a wonderful week. If you're coming to Geekway, please come up to me and say hi. I love meeting people at Geekway. I may not recognize you, but if you recognize me, please come up and say hi. I really do like to hear that and like to meet different people. And yeah, have a great day. I'll see you next week.